And now it's our What's Next series. This series began prior to the 2024 election and is continuing through May of this year. And it's designed to help inform and support the big questions of our faith at this time. The series is specifically curated to push back on political ideology and the political divide that has become this nation's religion. To live into the still speaking God, we are called to of who and what we are to one another, whether it be spiritually, faithfully, culturally, and of course, lovingly, during a time where we are being pulled apart. Today, we are joined by the Reverend Dwight Lee Wolter, and we're going to be exploring the role of loneliness in this late stage of our global pandemic and during our divided times. And so, welcome, Rev. It's good to see you today. How is your soul? How do you find yourself at this moment?
Well, my soul and my body are connected. So I just want to do a disclaimer here that I recently had surgery just a couple of days ago, very near my eye, and it was very successful. So don't be distracted with that. My soul is good. My soul is almost always in an ambivalent kind of state where I'm trying to be open as possible, as vulnerable and transparent as possible, and that sometimes hurts. So navigating these waters for me are a little bit challenging, but always inspirational. How about you?
Yes, I echo that. I find myself very much in the understanding my life and or my ministry, as if the two could be separated, into the liminal spaces. What does it mean to be joyful and not living and dying, all of those things all at the same time. So I find breath work as something that is very needed in my life. And I really am excited. I know that we had a mutual colleague of ours reach out to me and say, you've got to talk to this person. Um, Loneliness is something that is impacting all of us. In fact, we got our past Surgeon General, our most recent Surgeon General, a lot about loneliness, went on a tour to talk about the impacts of loneliness on our mental, physical, and emotional health and I loved that whenever I love to see that it was uplifted. And I love to see that we have a mutual colleague that said, I think you two should be. So I would like to hear, and this is really weird. I think you and I talked about this prior to the webinar. It's hard to say, well, tell me about your loneliness, right? But I am curious to know a little bit about you and how you got to focus on loneliness, not exactly sharing your own loneliness, unless, of course, you want to be reveal that.
Well, I've gotten a little bit better at it, especially since I recently had published The Gospel of Loneliness by the Pilgrim Press of the United Church of Christ. Defining gospel as the word good news, which is sort of an oxymoron to many, the good news of loneliness. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like the good news of eye surgery. It really doesn't exist. I mean, the good news, I guess, is that the result turned it out okay. But a lot of times you live through without knowing what the result might be. So I just saw loneliness as an exploration. My history with it, and I'm taking a couple notes here so that I don't wander too far. My name is Dwight Lee Wolter, and I'm named after four-star general and President of the United States, Dwight David Eisenhower, born on an Air Force base in California, and shortly thereafter moved to Japan with my family. So I essentially give me the child. It was generic, and it was gender at that time, but give me the person until they're 5 and I'll give you the adult. And so my formative years were in Japan, where it was a very dysfunctional family, but military officer family. So there would be all this madness in the family, and then my father getting saluted. I didn't know that not everybody lived on with guards, armed guards. I didn't know that not everybody got driven to school and that their fathers weren't saluted. I was a kid. But I also knew that soon thereafter that I was living in a land where the United States had bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So I had very much an American abroad as somebody who is distrusted, inherently disliked, but there was some economic and military and violent and armed and capitalistic liaisons and relationships going on that made it like, okay, I'll tolerate you if you tolerate me. But I felt this weirdness. I also had a childhood hip disease, so I walked on crutches. So I felt lonely because I couldn't interact physically. And then when we moved back to the United States, I was just so lonely because everything was different. I had no idea Mickey Mouse spoke English. My Mickey Mouse spoke Japanese. So it was just sort of this setup of loneliness. And it was with me. Not everybody has that experience, but maybe everybody does have some level of that dissociation, and that whether it's because of your identity or your ethnicity or whatever, that you have that I'm not part of this and there's something weird here and I don't know exactly what it is and I'll try even harder to fit in. All of that stuff contributed to my loneliness and I had no idea. Um, then I learned, and you're talking about dance or arts, that I had a talent for writing. I had no idea that I was a writer, but I've been a writer since I can remember, because thank God I had that creativity as a way to really embrace loneliness and turn loneliness. I wasn't trying to do this. My loneliness would come out in these beautiful poems. And even at a young age, I think I was a better writer then than I am now. So I saw the transformation of it as well as the suffering of it, that liminality. So it wasn't like a binary at all. It was this endemic nature of loneliness where it's either active or it's passive. So I either feel the loneliness or it's submerged underneath happy, happy. But it was always there. And that's part of what I believe. It's inherent to our soul. So then came I was tracking loneliness even before the pandemic because I thought something's going on here. And I was talking to my son at dinner one time, and we were in a restaurant. 4 people, they all had 4 cell phones up. And just I saw this thing. I started taking voluminous notes on loneliness. I had written 3 books on forgiveness about 10 years ago, 20 years ago now. So I latch onto a topic, and it was loneliness. And then came the pandemic. And I said, okay, the pandemic did not create loneliness, and it's not going to end it either. And community and church life alone is not an antidote to loneliness, because we've had 2,000 years of Christian community and loneliness is still there. It's everywhere. So I thought, where do we go with this? And I noticed it spiked certainly with health issues, domestic violence, went up during COVID, during the lockdown, substance use disorder went up, ODs went up during the lockdown. But I've always seen loneliness as a gift and as a portal. So that's my brief history of loneliness.
I will have to say, Dwight, there were many years ago, I think it was like 2017, I was taking a lift it was a lift ride in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the Lyft driver randomly brought up loneliness. And I hadn't even really thought about it in the way that him and I were interacting. And since then it was this, sometimes it's just the right time, right place, right person that says something and you have the light bulb pop on. And I definitely had been thinking about loneliness. And then even just myself recently last year, finally admitting to being lonely. I had set up my life with how life happens. I had welcomed and embraced what was going on. And I'm like, this is good. And then my puppy of 13 years had passed away. And I was like, and my son was gone. And I'm in a new town and I'm doing new jobs. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm really lonely. Now I know a little bit about what that Lyft driver was talking about. So I had been meandering around it. I had been preaching about it, but really realized that perhaps I had been lonely. I like how you talk about the spectrum of loneliness being within us. And it's just, when is it that we are perhaps attuned to paying attention to it? And so I really, really like you sharing your story about that, and allowing me to share mine. So, how much of loneliness and all of your documenting, in all of you, we've all seen people at the dinner table when we go out, or even in the movie theater, where they're on the phones the whole time, right? And I'm quick to pass judgments. I'm quick to be like, oh, they must be this or they must be that. Um, but but for that to be something where you and your son were having the conversation, you all were noticing these things. What about loneliness do you think leads into the divide that we are experiencing within our country at a larger perspective, but maybe in that smaller perspective, thinking about the divide within our communities itself?
Well, with all due respect to I hope he's still our Surgeon General, unless he got a cease and desist, don't come to work order. Vivek Murthy, who, and I'm very pleased that he wrote a book about loneliness, and that he actually declared loneliness to be an epidemic in the United States. Pandemic meaning worldwide, of course, epidemic meaning in the United States. Loneliness is a pandemic. It is an epidemic. Okay, I got alarmed there because I saw a divide right there. Well-intended, Surgeon General, fan of his, I get it. People struggle through the stigma and the shame of being loneliness. What do you mean you're lonely? You've got this whole community around you. We love you. We have a family. What an insult that you would sit in a corner and be lonely at Thanksgiving. All of this, all of this. Well, what's wrong with you that you're? And then when unintentionally we pathologize, that's what we have done when we declare epidemic. We've pathologized something. So we have pathologized loneliness. And I thought, great. Now we're pushing people even further away from willingness to come forth and say, hey, guess what? I'm lonely. Because it's like, okay, so what do we do? What do we do with epidemics? We declare war on them. We defeat them. We pound them down. We medicate them. We obliterate them. We said, we're gonna, like with Biden with COVID, we're gonna kick its butt. I said, are you kidding me? It's like, I'm gonna kick cancer's butt. This was cancer near my eye. I'm not kicking cancer's butt. Cancer is kicking my butt unless I get treatment. So that's okay. I don't need to feel like onward Christian soldiers that we're gonna go into this fight against loneliness, because I thought that my relationship to it is very different. I see loneliness as a common denominator. And by reframing it as a common denominator, you might hear me use the word reframing or framing again. It's if it's in, and I believe it's endemic to the human condition. I have utterly convinced God was lonely. God created humankind in God's own image. Why do you create something in your own image? Why do you have a kid with the money for the ones who bear the child, the pain? Well, and then you look at it and you see yourself reflected. You see yourself reflected. Even if it's an adopted child, you see love and mercy and compassion and kindness and dedication all reflected back on you. I think God created the world out of loneliness. And so it's if it's there, then it's a common denominator. And that what has divided us is we've decided to see things in binaries in a lot of respects. So, and you will know, of course, that you're moderating, and thank you to you guys. It makes me a little bit lonely that I can't see any of y'all, but I'll deal with it because I wrote the book. But I'm not able to read chats, and I'm sure that Ellie is doing that for later on, so I'm not disregarding you if I don't respond to what you've written in the chats there. There are a lot of things that are in binary, though, that there are byproducts of loneliness that can be points of concern. Anger can be a byproduct of loneliness. If you're lonely and you can't make connection, act out. Act out. And then you'll get attention. You might become the least favorite person in the room instead of the most favorite person in the room, but you won't be sitting there as a lump on the log. And you might, in some sort of contorted way, be saying, I won't be lonely, I'll be angry. I just saw a famous person whose Substack I follow less than an hour ago, saying, we are not required to end our anger. And I thought, okay, well, we're not required to end our loneliness, because I had this, why are we required? Who's requiring me to, if anger is appropriate, you bet it is. I just gave a talk in front of a legislator's office with a bullhorn thinking, is anybody listening to this stuff? You know, we're out on the street, horns honking. What am I doing? Is this making a difference? It was sort of like lonely in a way, because I was the only one with the bullhorn at that time. There were a couple of us that were invited. But anger is also a common denominator. So if we're looking at divides, and then at some point, hopefully, we're looking at how do we heal the divides if we can at all, and I believe we can, what I do is look for the common denominator. Look for the common denominator. Everybody in this room is lonely, and some of them are acting out and they're expressing their anger, but they're not alone in their anger, because I'm angry too. And I'm not alone in my loneliness, because they're lonely too. And so if I can speak to the common denominator, get the language, get away from the pathology and the stigma of loneliness, then I would be able to connect with them on the level, well, I'm angry too, or I'm lonely too. You know what? I'm angry, but you know what else I am? I'm lonely. You're lonely. And then all of a sudden the conversation shifts. I've seen it happen many times. When the election happened and House, Senate, White House, and every swing state goes to Trump. And many people, perhaps many on this Zoom, this webinar, and certainly many people in our personal lives, I'm sure, busted our behinds for this. And that we came up with zip is what it seemed like. And it was almost predictable to me. And if you differ with me, then differ with me, because this is just me. I thought, I'll give us 36 hours and we're going to fall into silence, and not even depression. We'll just be stunned, silent. No, I'm not doing social media. I'm not answering emails. Just fall out, radio silence. When the enemy's coming in, you turn off your radar and your cell phone so they can't find you remotely even. You're in your cave, so to speak. And then I thought, I hope we sit there for a while. But I said, my fear is that 36 hours we'll bounce back with our bullhorns and our rallies and stuff. There's nothing wrong. I've done it myself that few days ago. But part of it is, can we sit with this loneliness? Because for me, it was like so lonely, not aggravating. And I kind of thought it was coming just by the way I was reading some of the signs. But I felt like, I'm so lonely here. Everything I've done, and what do I believe in? And where do we do? Where do we go? And I wanted to sit with it longer, because I thought if we bounce back too soon, then we're going to jump back in, incomplete, inauthentic, unprocessed. We're not soup yet. We're hunks of semi-raw vegetables floating around in a too thin broth when we get our butts kicked. So can we sit there? I'm a firm believer, and this comes into relation with the duality of the opposite sides, the divide, is it's important not to hurry the healing. That we can just slow it up and see, well, this is what we're stuck with in a way. And that is a divide, but just because we perceive it as a divide doesn't mean, number one, that it is a divide. It's just because, especially if I haven't done my soul work, I haven't nurtured my soul. And I'm certainly not going to nurture the soul of the SO you know who's that kicked our you know what's in the election. You know, you want me to nurture your soul? I want to throw you out of fight, you know, all of that stuff. I'm not ready. I'm not soup yet. So to sit back and say, okay, I'm going to not hurry to healing, and I'm going to allow myself. It's like there's a saying, don't just sit there, do something. And I'm a fan of sometimes. Don't just do something, sit there. Um, and I think that the stigma and the pathologizing and the denial of it will continue until we begin to process some of the stuff that we see. I don't know how many people who serve congregations, are in congregations. I don't know the demographics of this group here. But I see in every church loneliness, in every community. So how's that for a start?
I feel like I went to church. Thank you, Dwight, for that. Yes, I was saying amen, you know, and noticing even in my own body when you were saying certain things, like how I was leaning in and then kind of taking a step back to, you know, our body tells a story. Our body, you know, if we listen to it. And I think the invitation to sit in it is really, really countercultural and very important right now. And so I just really want to thank you for that. And some of us on here might be like, yeah, I know to sit in. But even I find myself sitting in something that I know I'm uncomfortable in, and I'm just like, the brain is going, and I'm like, I got to go do this, and I got to go do that, and I got to, you know, and then it's just like, wait, what happened to just me saying 5 minutes ago I needed to sit in?
When I was writing this book, I wasn't even writing it, I was researching it. I thought, like, I don't want to write about and talk about and think about loneliness. I want to be loneliness. I want to be in the bowels of loneliness. And so I said, how can I figure this out? How can I render myself vulnerable enough? I thought, well, this is easy. I went up to people, not like strangers, you know, like, you know, I see a woman in a dark alley and I go up and say this to her or something, but it was, I would say to people, especially if it was true, how you doing, Dwight? I'm lonely. And you wouldn't believe what would happen. Oh my gosh. People would like start sweating. Some people like would lean in. Some people would lean back and make some joke. Oh, why don't you go meet a woman? And some people would lean in and say, what's going on? Tell me about it. It was really interesting. And I felt like some people were like, don't do that. Don't do that. I don't know how to go there. So I thought, okay, there's your red meat, you know, this is the hardcore of it. Can I say something about biblical references about this, about
Sure,
not lonely?
please.
I said, did God create humankind out of God's loneliness? That was a question for me. And yes, no, maybe, I don't care. I just wanted to know. Then I started looking like, how do we talk to people in faith communities, for example, about this? I'm a pastor, so this is of interest to me. But I also, 85%, if not more, of the people I know are not churched. But then I thought, well, what about Adam and Eve? Adam and Eve, buck naked in the Garden of Eden, get an eviction notice from the landlord. Out. And so they're out. Were they lonely for the garden? Were they lonely for home? Were they lonely? We had paradise and we blew it. What were they lonely? And then I went, oh my God, it gets better, worse, different. Was Cain lonely for Abel after he killed him? Prisons, Ellie, you know this because I admire your work and I've researched you also with incarcerated persons, are full of people who commit acts that they don't remember because they're under the influence of substances, or they're in a rage, or they have a mental illness or whatever, and sometimes they just wanted to do it, I guess. And then they're lonely for the person that they killed. And I saw, well, that's biblical also. And then I thought, what about Noah? Okay, here I am. I'm at the steering wheel. Get those, animals behind me, and don't worry, kids. I got it. I got this. I got this. I got this. And then you've got this rudderless in complete darkness, floating on an ark with no engine. What? And then, what if you're lonely for the people that you left off the ark when you close the gates? What if you're lonely for your garden? What if you're lonely for your cousins that couldn't come, only the immediate family, 2 by 2 or whatever? I can't profess that loneliness. I'm Noah and I'm in charge. And if I freak, they all freak. I've got it. I just want a moment of silence here because I'm concentrated on going nowhere fast. The loneliness of that. So all of that brought me the ability to give a vocabulary to loneliness without self-identifying. I'm the lonely sad sack who never learned how to stand up for himself, whatever the stigma and the pathology that comes around this. Do you like the way I use my hands all the time? Um, so I can say, well, let's talk about the references to it. So I don't have to talk about my loneliness. If I'm the pastor and I'm concerned, the most reluctant people to talk about loneliness in my experience, and I've done a couple of workshops on this, et cetera, webinars, et cetera, is clergy.
Mm,
You're supposed to have the answer.
mm,
Where are we going with this? I have a
mm.
problem, here's the solution. This is an outrage. I can't believe they're dead. We're gonna march, and that's good. That's good. That's good. But sometimes it's like I can't be the one that says I don't know what to do. I'm lonely and lost. It's a hard one. But they say, well, you know what? We have references for this. Look at Noah. Look at Adam and Eve. They got evicted. They got through it. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
good way to deal with getting evicted, but
Yeah.
it helps because you're identifying with some of the commonalities that we have. You were gonna ask me another question?
Yeah, I would, but an audience viewer asked a question that I think is a really good time to ask it now is sitting in loneliness can be risky sometimes for some, but how do we know for how long? Who should sit in it and who are we inviting in?
Sit and ye shall see.
Hmm.
Sit and ye shall see. And
Hmm.
if it's too much, it's too much.
Hmm.
If it's too little, you'll know.
Hmm.
Because here I am, I'll have a meat lover's large pizza with a diet Pepsi or something, like that oxymoron that people will use as an example. Well, I did cut back on calories a bit, but that's part of the process. Sitting is not just sitting and meditating about it. Part of it is feeling the resistance. Don't go there. I lost a child at the age of 6 in a car crash. I was desperately lonely for her. I learned
Hmm.
from her because as long as I stay stuck in the feelings, it was an impaired driver who caused her death. And my son was in the car. He lived, she didn't.
Hmm.
And it was like, I can't connect with her without connecting to the loneliness. And will it take me out? I don't know.
Hmm.
But I have a feeling it won't, because if it's drawing me closer to God or to love or to the great unknown or to an authentic relationship with myself, and if my authentic relationship with myself says, you fool, you shouldn't have put her in that car, or you should have taken her right instead of a left, whatever, okay, there I go there. Then I can deal with that also. But by pushing it away and denying it and categorizing it and numbing it and drugging it and drinking it and yelling at it, it got me nowhere. And then I finally sat with it. And then it brought me to an abrupt conclusion one day, several years later. Dwight, your daughter was killed. Your son survived. She was 6, he was 10. One was taken, one was spared. And I'm lonelier now with that realization, but it felt so authentic. If
Hmm.
it's too challenging, have a beer. Call your friend. Go for a jog. pick a fight with the neighbor. You'll get out of it somehow. We are very good. You were saying it's on this, on that, loneliness. It's un-American is what popped into my head. It's un-American to see what your feelings are. There's a lot invested in the dominant culture to numb us out, confuse us, and then have us sit in this, where the heck are we? Overload, overload, overload. And then, like, for me, loneliness can be like this. And then all of a sudden I need to just like, oh, I have 10 fingers. Oh, on my right hand. I can count the number of times I've been alone, just sort of sit into it. And then we'll know, I think we will know. And also, sometimes we need professional help to deal with this stuff, because loneliness is not a joke. I have a way of reframing it. I'm not watching our time too well. I need to be more mindful, because I'll talk about how to reframe loneliness and how to do it in a way that's fun. Actually fun, because I can sit with a lot of pain. I just told you, but I don't want to. And sometimes I sit with more pain than I need to. I'm in unintentional but voluntary self-confinement. And that sometimes takes the form of isolation, solitary, one of the misnomers of the world, solitary confinement. That's called cruel and unusual, inhuman treatment. Because if you're not spiritually trained for solitude, you're going to freak. So learn those lessons, learn how to sit, when to sit, how long to sit, and more shall be revealed.
I love that. We could probably talk for like a good 2 or 3 hours, and I wish we had the time to do so,
Right.
Dwight. Um, I think some of the questions that are coming in, and I want to invite you all to continue with those questions. I was going to take a moment and be like, hey, please enter your questions in, but y'all are on it. But I think the next question or two might help to answer a portion of them that came in. And it was, you alluded to this as, reframing loneliness. And I love how you talk about reframing and not unlearning something, right? Because the practice of unlearning is actually punishing learning. We can't unlearn, you just continue to learn. And I love your idea of like, we're reframing it. It's that invitation to keep moving in the process forward. And so I'm curious, you talk about loneliness as actually being a helpful tool in which to remember the good times, and then and have an invitation for us to be in it. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, one of the things that I see in churches that contributes to the denial for the person who's hasn't explored this. And by the way, I'll probably make, if we have a blockbuster webinar here, $5 off of royalties or something. So I didn't write a book for 3 years and published by Pilgrim Press for the money. The Gospel of Loneliness will walk you, the book, The Gospel of Loneliness by the Pilgrim Press, published in 2023, will walk you through a lot of what I'm talking about here. It's not my only book on loneliness, by the way, but it's the only one germane to, I think, this. One of the things I noticed before the pandemic and really after the pandemic is lonely for the good old days. Like we have, I'm a very creative person, and I'm very creative in my ministry. And we do a lot of different kinds. Last night we had a community orchestra that's housed in our church that did a concert, after which I had a dancer from China named Wendy Wang who did a dance. And then we had the Turkish Cultural Center feed everybody for free at their iftar. It became a Ramadan iftar. And it was like everything except for the submarine launch with a champagne bottle over the bow. That was the only thing missing from this. It was like crazy. How are we going to do this? It flowed perfectly. But change can happen. Change is painful. And to say, well, get over it. I mean, I'm from a military family. I didn't get over nothing, especially from somebody who drank down everything. So what are you telling me about getting over? I don't want to get over. I want to get under. I want to get around. I want to get through. If you can't jump over the wall, you can't dig underneath it, you can't walk around it, what do you do? And this is my early spirituality before I became a Christian at the age of 43. If you can't, everything else fails, walk through the wall. And that sounds insane. Walk through it. The Wizard of Oz, a great story of loneliness. Dorothy wanted to get home. I want to go home. I want to go home. That's all she wanted. Follow the yellow brick road. Don't take the heroin. The poppies. Heroin's made from poppies. Just follow the path. Follow the path. There will be distractions. In the churches I saw and I see today, aging congregations. So there's smaller congregations that are getting older. There's shrinking Sunday schools. There are shrinking baskets. There are buildings, sanctuaries that seat, our seats 420. And in a Republican Catholic community, we got 420 seats. Like, who was drinking what to build this place? It's beautiful, but things are getting smaller and older and less able. So we're like, well, we're on with it because the old ways aren't working, and we're going to have blended services, and we're going to do this. I've done all this stuff. But also to say, tell me about it. And they come up with these stories, and some of them are just beautiful stories, but they're stories about being lonely and getting older, and your friends are dying, and they used to have the potluck suppers. Maybe some of y'all still do. We don't have potluck suppers. I can't get them to do DoorDash. You know, it's too much of an inconvenience. It's just like, we've got a gymnasium, but our youth group, they're not going to play in a gym. They're going to play video games. You know, it's just like and that can be very lonely. It can be very lonely. And they sit there and say, well, I'm supposed to be with it because the younger generation is taking over, and this new leadership of pastors, they have a big knowledge of contemporary music. We're going to play Jean-Baptiste Freedom, and we're going to do all this stuff. And yeah, okay, but it does make people feel like they're being left behind. Honor it and celebrate it. Honor it and celebrate it. We're a church of traditions and transitions, not a choice. Celebrate it. Bring in the elders. The view from 80, the view from 70, the view from 60. Might even be a few that can give the view from 90. And say, bring them up and say, tell us, sacred elders, what was this community like when you were growing up? Well, everybody, blah, 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 blah. And it's a way of honoring. And so I think instead of meaningless bemoaning, why is she bemoaning the past? Bemoaning the past, she's the harbinger of the past. And the future becomes the past, and things repeat it. And bell bottoms came back and left. And the mullet hairdo, that came back. Thank God it lasted 3 or 4 days. Loneliness loves company. Loneliness loves company. Let's be lonely together. And I can do a method on that. I can tell you how to do that.
Yes, I love it. I just had a conversation with my hairstylist. The mullet is back in certain
I know.
areas.
Should be outlawed, but never mind.
It's what happens when you have pixie haircuts. You gotta let it grow out. But yes, I love it. You know, and I think you hit on a lot. And I'm going to come back to that fourth question that I have for you. But
Okay.
and I just want to let the viewers know that towards the end of the year, we're actually, I'm working with wellness ministries and some other folks. We're going to continue to have the conversation around clergy loneliness and their spouses, you know, and their families, because having a clergy as a partner in your family system impacts everybody. So just keep an eye out towards the end of 2025, like you'll remember now, because whatever. And in 2026, we'll actually have a deep dive into our Frontline Faith Learning platform to have these kind of conversations. So I just want to know that. I'll let you all know that. But when we talk about reducing loneliness, or what happens when you are a church and you offer all of these things and nobody shows up, how is it that you, what is it that you could recommend to people in those circumstances?
Well, it's not my job to reduce anything. And it's not my job to expand anything. And when Vivek Murthy came out with, he declared loneliness to be a epidemic. Loneliness is an epidemic. I said, okay, so if we saw a sudden outburst of joy, would we declare joy an epidemic? Would we declare envy an epidemic? So if loneliness can be an epidemic, why can't joy be an epidemic? And we have to deal with it. Oh my God, we don't know what to do with it. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I think they're all on drugs. Oh my God, we got to get them tested. Get DNA tests, breathalyzers. Too much joy in this world. I don't know how to deal with it. That probably would freak out a lot of people, including me. So that's part of it. I'm not reducing loneliness. Why? Look, one of the things I do when I do this live in gatherings, and this is live, but you know what I'm saying, in person. And this gets into the methodology. I'm segueing into that in a second for a reason. I start out with saying, I want you to choose a song, and sometimes I'll give them a list because I can Spotify it, which is the loneliest song you've ever heard. Only the lonely, da 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 da. Well, since my baby left me, boom boom, Heartbreak Hotel, I feel so lonely, baby. There you go. All right, Ellie, let's do it.
I've
Lonely
seen all of
Boy by
these
the
and
Black
talked.
Keys. Ellie, you can see some of them desperately lonely. Billie Holiday, Miles Davis,
Nina
uh,
Simone.
Nina Simone. It's just like on and on and on and on. One is the loneliest number. And what we did, I'm segueing, we did a festival of loneliness. That's the reframing. I'm not reducing loneliness. I'm saying, how can you reduce something you don't know is there? Reduce your nastiness. I'm not nasty. Do you know how they treat me? It's like, you know what, then increase, decrease. How about see it, accept it, feel it, name it, claim it, endorse it, laugh at it, reframe it. Because I have a picture of myself as a kid, and it's a portrait of it. It was done many years ago. It's not a particularly in favor word now, but I have a right to it, and I did it in the late 70s. I was invited to submit a submission to a piece to an arts magazine. And I did, mine was a picture of me, and the title was Portrait of the Artist as a Young American Cripple Graduating from Kindergarten in Japan.
Mm.
And there was a picture of me on my crutches, because I used to look at that picture and cry.
Mm.
And I thought, you know what? And all of a sudden, all these people came up and they wanted to talk to me, wanted to buy me a drink or hold my hand or let's go for a walk. If you ever need to, call me. It was a beautiful thing. So I'm not sure that we need to reduce loneliness. I think that if we acknowledge the loneliness that's going on in the least people willing to talk about it, like I said, is the clergy. You're lucky. You have a job as a pastor. I don't even know why we pay it. Apostle Paul used to do this for free. You've got seminary. You went to seminary. You've got men's fellowship, women's fellowship, potluck, bingo night, book clubs, bowling league. What do you mean? And then lonely in the crowd. One is the loneliest number. Two can be the loneliest number, because loneliness in a marriage, or not necessarily a marriage, in a committed relationship between two loving partners, can be horrible. This is my partner for life, so to speak, and I'm lonely. Who do I tell that to? My kids? Being with your other parent, makes me really lonely. But that's okay, kids. Good night. Nobody's gonna say that. So just to be able to own that, but the way to get around it, instead of saying I'm lonely in the pulpit, because so many are not willing to do that. Believe me. I mean, believe yourself, because you're going to be doing this in a while. Say, hey, bring in a loneliness song. And they'll bring in Billie Holiday, Nina Simone, all of these people listed. And then why that song? Well, because when I was a kid, okay, but what about that song? Well, I was dating so-and-so. Well, what happened? And all of a sudden they're talking about, I was a kid, that song, my partner at that time. They're talking about themselves.
Mhm.
They're talking about themselves. And they fell into it in a beautiful melodic way. So if we're short on time, I can crash through a couple points of change.
I think we can go about 5-10 minutes extra, so you're good. Go ahead.
Okay, unless you see questions, because I'm not
Well,
monitoring.
there are questions, but I think you're good segue, and then we'll come back.
Okay, so when I did the Festival of Loneliness, and not every church can do this, and I'm aware of that, I got a Museum of Loneliness, and I invited artists in the community to submit a painting or sculpture that here are the dimensions, and if it's a sculpture, it has to be a weight limit, etc. Here are the dimensions. I did it in cooperation with an art league. They're not church-going people, they're an art league, right? So then it was juried and curated. And then the ones who got in, I think there were 29. Then we had the same woman I used last night who did a dervish dance. She's from China, Wendy Wang, come in, and I said, look, I said, first time I met her, you're gorgeous, you're young, you're talented, you're not from America. I'm telling you, I want you to do the dance of loneliness, but I don't want it to be some, oh, look, I've emerged from loneliness. I said, because loneliness can kill you, but it can also be, and she used Chinese translate on her, she said, beautiful. Loneliness can also be beautiful. So we had her do a dance, and then we had bands play live, 5 acts, 5 groups play the loneliest songs in the world. So we had visual loneliness through the paintings, bodily loneliness coming out of, and then coming out in this beautiful way with this lonely music from China. And then these bands playing all of these great songs. Eleanor Rigby, Father Mackenzie picks up the rice from the wedding has been. Writing the words to a sermon that no one will hear, no one comes near. Look at him working, darning his socks in the night by the door. Are you kidding me? What is this for? All the lonely people, where do they all come from? Popular culture is doing what I think churches are often not doing. It's just say, let's celebrate it in song. And so of the 29 painters, 1 dancer, and 15 musicians, 29, 30, 45 people, not one attends a church, mosque, synagogue, Buddhist temple, ashram, not one. They were dying to contribute to this thing. And as they came in to drop off their art, I said, why are you here? You're like, how old? 26? Why are you doing this? Well, my mother just died. And this painting inspired me. And then she gathers on opening night with her family. She was from, I don't know, somewhere in the Middle East. And they're taking a picture. It's like the picture was like mom. So it's like sister, brother, dad. And then, hey, mom, like she could see this photo. I'm almost choking up with tears seeing this. It was like, oh my God, what have I unleashed? It was so beautiful and so painful. It still is. Look at this. And then other things that we did is I formed the Loneliness Loves Company club, Loneliness Loves Company club, and just have people to get together and say, we love company, we're all lonely, yay, let's have a loneliness parade. They have a Valentine's Day parade. Let's do the opposite of, I think it's August 14th is the opposite day of Valentine's Day. We'll have a loneliness day. We'll get a parade permit. They'll turn us down, but we'll apply for it anyway. And then we'll just go out and do things, including the loneliness songs. You bring them all in, we'll listen to all these great songs and talk about loneliness in other people in those genres. Why country western? I didn't know you. I've known you 30 years and you come in with I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry by Hank Williams Sr. I did country. Oh, I love country music. I didn't know. All of that happens. And then you can move on to the Festival of Loneliness, which we did, but also loneliness field trips. Get a group of people together, talk about loneliness in going to a restaurant. Now, pardon me if this is a sexist comment, I don't think it is. For me, I've never been a self-identifying woman, but women going out to eat alone are often getting hit on, or they're just, and often people will go out. So it's say, okay, you went to a restaurant alone, and then after you do that, you experience it, and then you come back and you say, okay, did you bring a book? Did you get a crappy table by the kitchen and between the bathroom door and the kitchen door because you're by yourself away from the front window because we don't want to have a sad sack restaurant on a Saturday night? Did you get rushed out? Did you imagine someone on the other side of the seat? Oh, if Mary or Bill was here, they would have loved this entree. Did you imagine your deceased partner? Just like start to unpack it. And then you're destigmatizing dining alone for sad sacks, widows, and losers, or whatever or because you have the disease of loneliness going on in your head. Another one was, I'll wrap it up here, go to a museum alone. If you are able to go, if you live in the rural community, get a book of photographs and go through that alone. And then go back and pick one. And when you go to the museum alone, make sure you're a little hungry. Don't go there fed. Go there a little hungry, because loneliness is kind of a hunger. And look for the loneliness in the paintings, but also look for the loneliness in the people watching the paintings. And then we'll get together next Tuesday night at 7, and we'll talk about what was it like to go to a museum alone. People won't go to a movie alone. They won't go to a restaurant alone. They won't go to a museum alone because they're lonely. We're making it worse. And the same thing with a movie. If you don't have a museum, go to a movie. You know what's a great movie about loneliness? Barbie. I wrote about this for Religion News Service. The woman who did that was doing like menopause Barbie, and the secretary at Mattel. Why? Her daughter says, "Why did you do this?" She said, "Well, I was feeling a little lonely." It's in the movie, and that's how that whole movie took off.
Hmm.
And then there's other things that you could frame, like talk about the present of presence. If we can be present to ourselves, then you don't have to go say I'm lonely. You will come across, I believe, generalization, as somebody who's been there, done that, who is open to this spirit, who's not going to be judgmental, is not going to chicken pot pie you and women's fellowship you and out of it, cure it for you. Go to work at the soup kitchen, then you'll see lonely. Oh boy. Just like, okay, go to the soup kitchen without having eaten, and then be serving the food, and you're hungry for that, what you used to be, quote, patronizingly out of your generosity. You're as hungry as they are, but you're on one side of the table and the other. So what's the difference between you, the server and the served? And when you convolute those things, then you can have fun doing this. And then all of a sudden, I'm lonely, I'm angry, I'm petty, I'm cheap, I'm lovely, I'm beautiful, I'm butchered up by some plastic surgeon who doesn't look like he knew what he was doing. Well, I'm authentically me, for better or worse. And I'm not going to pathologize myself or be pathologized by anybody else. And I can take that spirit of reconciliation and ownership into the guy with the bullhorn. He went from being the most bipartisan member of the House of Representatives, according to his website, and now he's a full MAGA Trump dude, and he's kneecapping everybody that has a kneecap. And I could go in. Somebody invited me to meet Trump, and he invited Trump to our city. Big space. It was huge controversy because I have a history. I did a funeral for a hate crime murder victim, and got stigmatized. And it was so lonely to do that because my son said, "Don't eat food on Main Street. You'll be eating spit," because that's what they think of this community for doing this. Had me meet Trump, and they were yelling and screaming, and I said, they're lonely, and the other group are lonely. Let's talk about loneliness. They're angry, and we're angry. Let's talk about it. Tell me something that makes you angry, and just listen to them. It makes me angry this, and then they tell you that what you're angry about. And if they won't do it, then don't. So that's some of the methodology. Like I said, this could be spilled. This is all poured out in the Gospel of Loneliness. If you ever wanted to go further, my loneliness really is that I can't see anybody. I can't
Right.
read chats. I can't see any eyes, and
Right.
people are like, well,
Not
okay,
at all.
that
This
okay,
chat is alive. Somebody said
okay.
Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It's a stigma that isn't discussed. Somebody else said friendliness is not connection and it's not intimacy. So it really is. I think what you do is you invite people into that's your realization. Why is that your realization? Discover more about your realization, dig a little bit deeper, and then invite others along into your realization, right? It's like when I start this webinar, I changed the webinar script a little bit to say, I want this space to be a space where you're invited into curiosity, which manifests itself into care. And I love how all of this, everyone's like, yes, 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 yes. And here are some other things. People are like, preach, people are like, sing. I do want to get to one final question though. Someone says, and all of you have asked, not all of you, many of you have asked questions, and I feel that Reverend Dwight Lee has answered them. If you feel that this hasn't been the case and we haven't gotten to it, please send me an email. My email address is the one that invited you to today's webinar. Send me your question and I will forward it to Dwight and we'll go from there. But this one final thought is our society has created a structure that does not value vulnerability, authenticity, and connection. It tells people that happiness comes not from connection, but from, I'm just going to summarize and say, capitalism. So how does insidious evil contribute to keeping us disconnected? And where do you see the connection between loneliness and vulnerability?
I think that loneliness is a number one great portal. It's a portal through which we go to creativity and empathy. Because to be telling people to get up, I think we're doing them, the congregations and our neighbors and friends, a disservice in a way. You just got the Jesus kicked out of you in an election. And now 36 hours later, we want you to sign up and go rally. I think that we're not, when I talk about some of the pain and the loneliness in the congregations, it's like, if you can see people where they are, it's empowering because I'm talking about loneliness and we've got whatever number of chats, I can't see that. So obviously it works. And so if we can do that, it's very empowering to be seen. Not just because of you're a good worker and you're always volunteering, but sometimes because you're real. And I think that connection will be vulnerability is a difficult place to be. Clergy often don't go there. And if they do, it's vulnerability on parade. I'm going to tell you the end and then the middle, and we're going to go down and then we're going to rebound. You can always chart sermons. My supervisor in seminary, the Union Seminary in Manhattan, she used to chart my sermons with it, and she would give me a graph and show me, okay, you really bottomed out. I don't know what you were talking about. Spring back, but she would graph it for me. That was her criticism. So loneliness and vulnerability. Loneliness is a precious thing. Vulnerability is a precious thing. And I try to be as vulnerable as possible to my congregation. And if they pull crap on me, I can feel my spirit going back into myself. And I want to fight it. I'm not going to fight it. I'm protecting myself. Why am I protecting myself? Because I don't feel safe. Why don't you feel safe? Because I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. I showed you. I became as vulnerable as I can, and you come back with, okay, keep it. I don't comment about it. What's the point of commenting about it? You haven't done the work. Research. There's a component of work in this. Look, Google what vulnerability is. Google words like lonely, isolation, solitude. Solitude is the spiritual discipline. Isolation isn't. The world was declared in isolation and people started tanking all over the place. And then outlawing Zoom, some of the denominations were doing because they wanted to force people back into the sanctuary. It's like, you got to lay off the pot, man. Your mind's going someplace where it really shouldn't be. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. It's like, We can't force it, but we can model an authentic model. What I say when I say we're doing the Festival of Loneliness is I say I am a lonely pastor, and have this huge Gothic church, and I've authored 10 books, and everybody knows me from TV or newspapers or something. And you know what? I live alone. I had cancer. I'm lonely. I don't know what I'm doing. I think nobody's listening, and I want you to teach me. I want you to help me be spiritual. I was saying this to musicians in bars. Last night, Muslims doing the call to prayer and then they were praying on the prayer mats in the sanctuary because that was the final call of prayer of the day. All of this stuff going on. And it's like, yeah, you teach me. You teach me. Instead of, I'm going to teach you, that's the pulpit. I'm going to show you. And we're going to go, I'm going to pose the question. Then all of a sudden we're going to crash. But don't worry, we're going to come back so that you can say, cookie time. No, sometimes you stay down. Sit there and help people sit there. Help people sit there. It's not vulnerability is a weakness. Give me a break. If vulnerability is a weakness, I'm so happy to be weak. What is more lonely than, dear God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken me? What's lonelier than that? If it's good enough for Jesus, then it's good enough for me. Crucified? You don't know the violence I came out of as a child. You will never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
My brother was a career criminal. He was lonely for prison. That is like, oh dear, God have mercy. All my siblings are dead of addictions. So it's like, I know it, but how did I come through it? Because I'm special? Because I'm the only one? And now I'm going to give you my methodology and you follow by my book and you can be like, no, let's be lonely together. Lonely, sad sacks for Jesus.
I love it. I love it. And, and I always invite folks in these community spaces, Dwight, like when we get a chance to understand, when we're vulnerable in spaces and somebody more often than not unintentionally harms us. I talk about building a safety plan. What is it that I can take responsibility for in the feeling, the way I feel when something happens? What can I do to bring myself comfort and safety? And then invite us into that conversation with somebody and say, when you did or said this, this is how I felt. This is how I've worked towards healing. Can we talk a little bit more? Can you come into this space with me? Because the person may not even have known that they did something, right? And yeah.
One thing that's very lonely is when you do that and then you get the same old again.
Yeah.
That's very lonely because sometimes it's not, I have 3 books on forgiveness. And one of them is the ultimate forgiveness sometimes is you walk away.
Yeah.
And that there is not necessarily, God never said that that God was going to put a pretty bow on top of my life. God never said that God is looking out for Dwight, and every time Dwight has this, maybe I do feel grace for sure. I wouldn't be doing this stuff, but I don't know. My kids would say, because I had prostate cancer a couple of years ago during the pandemic. My kids would say, "What if you die?" I said, "You're going to get through this." I said, I don't know if I'm going to get through this. I'll get through it or I won't, but it won't. If I don't get through it living, then I'll get through it dying. But to get to that space takes some work to learn. Don't tell people let's have 5 minutes of silence when people have monkey mind. They're gonna freak after about 30 seconds, and that's okay. Okay, so do me a favor, Ellie, as we wrap up here, I'm sure, and we're over time. Thank you. I would love to, if it's humanly possible, to get those chats because this is my loneliness. Where could I have been of service? But the technology in 20 years might be where we could do everything all at once and push pizzas to each other through the screen. But in the meantime, I'm going to trust that you guys are okay and that I have been of some remote assistance, or you could pity me. That would be good. Whatever you want to do, that there's something real and authentic happen here. Let's not sell ourselves short. It is
Right.
not our vulnerability that renders us weak. It is our BS fake military named after Eisenhower, false bravado that says you can't hurt my soul because I'm fortified by Jesus. No, 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 no. Jesus was crying on the cross for God's sake. And that gave me strength. It really did. It really did. Gave me strength. Jesus wept. Jesus
Yeah.
was lonely. Okay, so was Dwight. Let's move on.
I love it. I love, look, for all of you who are coming to Synod, I'm going to have
Oh, yeah.
Nurture the Soul cards that will have a quote from several of our Nurture the Soul webinars. And I feel like I could create a whole deck of quotable things from you, Dwight, that will have us smiling and cheerful. And that has been the reaction in chat, which you, Dwight, will get a copy of. Beloveds, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have had you join us live. For all of those who are going to be watching later, please share this with somebody that you know could benefit from us. Come to Synod where you'll be able to see Dwight and I, and Dwight, make sure you come and say hello to me. You are a gift. Your vulnerability, Dwight, your sharing of your story, your tapping into the arts and the invitation to meet each other where we're at is such a gift. And I am so grateful for you. And for
I
the
hope to
rest of
see
you,
you
I
in
hope,
Synod.
yeah, oh yeah,
I
definitely,
think I'm
definitely.
doing a workshop there. They haven't announced it yet, or they announced it and I don't know yet. I might be
Yeah, I
doing a
don't know if they've announced it. I'm not on that end, but I want to welcome you all back for our next webinar with the Reverend Dr. Sarah Lund. It's this Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called Blessed Minds: Breaking the Silence of Neurodiversity. So many of our churches are unintentionally exclusive towards people whose brains work differently. So we're going to explore some of these theological insights into neurodiversity as a part of God's good creation, and how to help churches embrace the gifts of neurodiversity and to become a place of belonging for all. And then, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about an inclusive worship experience. But before I let you all go, and before the webinar ends abruptly after our video, Dwight, I want to turn it back over to you for a benediction. Are you able to send us forth? And I just want to thank you all, beloveds, for all who you are and what you do in the world.
loving, merciful, challenging God of many holy names. We have gathered together in our strength and in our weaknesses, in our vulnerabilities, and in our yearning, in our openness. So please, if it be your will, please bestow a blessing upon us, and please see us for persons who are yearning for you, and that you will be a part of us that will give us what we need to move forward and to be a force of good and strength, quiet, strong, resilient strength, quiet in spirit, loud in mouth perhaps, but that will show that we can reflect your goodness the way you have reflected it to us. Let us be perhaps the good news that people are longing to hear, and they might only have an opportunity to hear it from you wherever you go forth from this moment. Amen.
Amen.
Siblings in Christ, if you are moved by this conversation, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or has nurtured your soul for the journey, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help to provide programs like this, which are an essential part of our ministries in the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed on your journey and know that you are not alone. We are holding you in prayer. Amen.